Among the captives, a little girl suddenly screamed his name. Before the guards could stop her, she broke free from the slave line and ran straight toward the Alpha King's throne. The entire hall froze. Warriors reached for their swords, but the child wasn't afraid. She stopped before the most feared Alpha alive, looked up at him with shining silver eyes, and called softly, "Daddy!" The word hit him harder than any blade. His wolf roared instantly, because in that single moment, he knew the truth. Years ago, he had saved a slave girl on a stormy night, a girl he sheltered, a girl he never saw again. He never knew she left carrying his child. Now the past had returned, not as a memory, but as a daughter standing before his throne. And that one word was about to shake the entire Alpha Kingdom. Chapter 1. The royal palace was louder than ever. Nobles, warriors, and pack leaders filled the grand auction hall. Golden chandeliers shone above them, while chained captives from conquered lands were lined up below the throne. Some cried, some trembled, some had already lost hope. At the very top of the hall, seated on his black stone throne, was the Alpha King, cold, silent, and feared by all. His presence alone kept the entire hall quiet. One by one, slaves were presented and priced like goods. Then, it happened. From the middle of the captive line, a small voice suddenly screamed, "Alpha!" The hall fell silent. Guards turned instantly. Before anyone could react, a little girl, no older than 5, pulled free from the chains holding her. She ran, barefoot across the polished marble floor. Gasps echoed. "Got to stop her," a guard shouted. But something strange happened. The closer she got to the throne, the more the warriors hesitated, as if an unseen force held them back. The girl didn't look afraid. She looked certain. She stopped right in front of the Alpha King, so small, so fragile, yet her silver eyes shone boldly as she tilted her head up to meet his gaze. The entire court held its breath. Then she spoke softly, but her voice echoed through the silent hall. "Daddy." Time stopped. The word struck the Alpha like thunder. His wolf roared violently inside him. A powerful, undeniable bond surged through his blood. He rose slowly from his throne, staring down at the child. Her scent, her eyes, her aura, they were his. And a shock spread across the hall as the feared Alpha King, the ruler who never showed emotion, dropped to one knee before the little girl. His voice when he spoke was no longer cold. It was shaken, dangerously protective. "Who is your mother?" The child smiled softly, and the answer she gave was about to shake the kingdom even more. Chapter 2. Silence ruled the auction hall. No one moved. No one even breathed too loudly. The Alpha King remained on one knee before the little girl. His sharp eyes locked on hers. Up close, the truth became louder. Her scent reached him first. It was soft, familiar, wrapped with his own Alpha bloodline. His wolf stirred violently inside him, not in anger, in recognition. A deep, ancient pull tightened in his chest, stronger than instinct, stronger than mate bond. It was blood. The child tilted her head, studying his face without fear. Her silver eyes glowed faintly, the exact shade of his wolf under the full moon. Gasps began spreading across the court. The nobles saw it too. The resemblance was undeniable. The Alpha slowly lifted his hand, hesitating for the first time in years. When his fingers touched her cheek, power surged through him like lightning. His wolf roared loudly in his mind. "Mine!" The bond snapped fully into place. There was no doubt left, no question, no denial. This child was his daughter. The Alpha rose to his full height, his aura exploding across the hall like a storm. Every guard dropped to one knee instantly. Fear filled the air, but his gaze never left the child. Slowly, possessively, he removed his royal cloak and wrapped it around her small shoulders. A public act, a claiming act. Then his voice thundered through the palace. "Hear me!" The hall trembled. "This child carries my blood." Shock ripped through the crowd. Murmurs exploded. Nobles stood in disbelief. Slave traders turned pale. The alpha pulled the girl gently to his side, resting a protective hand on her head. His next words were not cold. They were deadly. From this moment, she is no longer a slave. He paused. His eyes darkened with warning. She is my daughter. The declaration shook the throne room, but as the court struggled to accept the truth, the alpha felt something else rising inside him. Rage. Because if his daughter had been sold as a slave, then her mother had suffered far worse, and whoever was responsible would not survive his wrath. Chapter 3. The throne room had long been cleared, but the Alpha King remained restless. The little girl, now bathed, fed, and wrapped in royal silk, slept peacefully in his private chamber. Yet sleep would not come to him, because her scent, her eyes, her presence, had unlocked memories he had buried for years. Memories of a stormy night he never truly forgot. Years ago, before he became king, before the crown hardened his heart, there was a battle near the border of his territory. After the war, captured slaves were brought for execution. Traitors, prisoners, and the unwanted. That was when he saw her, a young slave girl, bruised, bleeding, barely conscious. Yet she did not beg. Even as soldiers dragged her toward death, her eyes held quiet strength. Something about her scent stopped him. He ordered the execution halted. The warriors were shocked. Their alpha never interfered for slaves. But he did that night. He carried her himself to a shelter inside the palace grounds. For hours, healers worked on her wounds while the storm raged outside. Thunder shook the skies. Rain poured endlessly. When she finally woke, fear filled her eyes at first. But he spoke gently, something he rarely did. He told her she was safe. For the first time in years, she slept without chains. They spoke little, but silence between them felt warm, not empty. She told him fragments of her story, sold young, passed between cruel masters, treated as nothing more than property. Yet she never lost her will to live. That strength pulled him closer. One night turned into long conversations, and in the quiet heart of the storm, fate bound them together. A single night he never allowed himself to forget. But at dawn, duty returned. War called him back to the front lines. Before leaving, he gave her protection papers, money, and freedom, enough to start a new life far from slavery. He promised she would never be hunted again. Then he left, believing he had saved her fate, believing that was the end of their story. But now, standing beside the sleeping child, he realized the truth. It had never ended. She had survived. She had lived in hiding, carrying his child alone, raising their daughter in the shadows of the kingdom that would have enslaved her again if discovered. A palace informant later confirmed it. A former slave woman had been seen for years moving between hidden villages, protecting a silver-eyed child, never staying long, always running, always afraid. The Alpha's hands clenched at his sides. Rage burned in his chest. While he ruled in power, she had struggled in fear. While he sat on a throne, his daughter had worn chains. His voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. "Find her." Warriors bowed instantly, but his next words carried something deeper than command. They carried regret. Alive, unharmed, brought to me, because the slave girl he once saved was no longer just a memory. She was the mother of his heir, and this time, he would not let her disappear again. Chapter 4. The news spread faster than wildfire, from palace servants to noble families to rival packs beyond the kingdom walls. Everyone heard the same shocking truth. The Alpha King had a daughter, a secret heir, a child born in hiding, and now, living inside the royal palace, inside the kingdom, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the rise of a princess, others feared what it meant for the throne. But outside the kingdom, enemies saw opportunity, because a hidden heir was also a vulnerable heir. And if the Alpha's bloodline could be cut off early, the throne itself would weaken. Far beyond the borders, in the territories of rival Alphas, secret meetings were held. Dark halls, low flames, whispers of war. One command echoed through them all. Kill the child. Assassins were summoned. Rogues, mercenaries. So shadow wolves who lived only for blood and gold. They were given one mission: sneak into the Alpha Kingdom, find the girl, and erase the heir before her claim could ever be recognized. Back in the palace, the Alpha felt the danger before it arrived. His wolf had grown restless since claiming his daughter. Protective, alert, watching everything. He doubled the palace guards. No servant entered the child's wing without being screened. Warriors patrolled day and night, but danger still found a way in. One quiet night, while moonlight poured through the palace windows, the little girl slept peacefully in her royal chamber. A soft wind moved the curtains, silent, almost gentle, too gentle. From the shadows of the balcony, a dark figure stepped in, then another, assassins. And their movements were soundless, trained, deadly. Silver blades glinted under the moonlight as they approached the child's bed. One raised his dagger slowly, ready to strike, but before the blade could fall, a violent force blasted through the room. The doors exploded open. The Alpha King stood there, eyes glowing, aura raging like a storm unleashed. He had felt it, the threat to his blood. His voice dropped into a deadly growl. "You dare enter my child's chamber?" The assassins lunged, but they never stood a chance. Within seconds, the room became a battlefield of claws and shadows. The Alpha's wolf tore through them mercilessly, faster than sight, deadlier than fear. When the last assassin fell, silence returned, heavy. Breathing hard, the Alpha turned toward the bed. His daughter had woken, but she wasn't crying. She simply looked at him, trusting, unafraid. He knelt beside her, checking her carefully for harm. His voice, though soft, carried a vow that shook the air. "No one will touch you?" He pulled her into his arms protectively. His eyes darkened toward the fallen assassins, because now it was clear. This was no longer palace gossip. It was war, and anyone who came for his heir would face the full wrath of the Alpha King. Witty Chapter 5. Morning light poured gently into the royal palace, but this morning felt different, stronger, warmer, because the kingdom was no longer waking to just a king, it was waking to a princess. After the assassination attempt, the Alpha King made one thing clear: his daughter would no longer live in the shadows. She would stand in the light of the throne, where no one could deny her existence again. A grand royal ceremony was announced across the kingdom. Nobles gathered. Warriors lined the palace halls. Pack leaders traveled from distant territories to witness the historic event. The throne room glittered with gold banners and royal flames. At the center stood the Alpha King, dressed in full ceremonial armor. Beside him stood the little girl, no longer in slave cloth, but in a flowing silver gown stitched with royal symbols. Her hair was neatly braided. A small crown rested gently on her head. She looked tiny, but powerful. The court watched in silence as the Alpha stepped forward. His voice thundered across the hall. "Today, I correct a wrong fate tried to right." He rested his hand on the child's shoulder. "This child carries my blood, my name, my throne." Gasps echoed softly, but no one dared interrupt. Then came the final declaration. "From this moment forward, she is crowned princess of the Alpha Kingdom." The hall erupted in kneeling bows. Warriors struck their chests in respect. Nobles lowered their heads. The once enslaved child had just been recognized as royal heir. But the Alpha did not stop there. If she was to survive palace politics, rival enemies, and in future wars, she had to grow strong. So her training began. Royal tutors taught her reading, history, and laws of the kingdom. Warriors trained her in defense, how to stand, how to move, how to command presence. She learned palace etiquette, how to speak, how to lead. But the most important training came from him, her father. Under moonlight, he took her to the sacred wolf grounds. There he taught her about their bloodline, their strength, their instincts. At first, her wolf was shy, hidden, unsure. But one night, under a full silver moon, it happened. Her wolf aura flickered to life, small but radiant. The alpha felt pride surge through him, not just as a king, but as a father. Days turned into months. The frightened slave child slowly disappeared. In her place rose a confident young princess. She walked palace halls without fear. Guards bowed as she passed. Servants smiled instead of pitied. Strength replaced chains. Royalty replaced slavery. One evening, standing beside her father on the palace balcony, she looked up at him and asked softly, "Daddy, will they still try to hurt me?" The alpha knelt beside her, his gaze firm but warm. "They will try." He brushed her hair gently. "But you are not weak anymore." His voice carried pride and promise. "You are my daughter, Princess of Alphas." She smiled bravely at the kingdom below. No longer a captive, no longer forgotten, but rising, just as destiny had always intended. Chapter 6. The palace gates had never been so heavily guarded. Since the assassination attempt, security had tripled. No visitor entered without inspection. No stranger walked freely. Yet on one quiet afternoon, a lone woman appeared at the outer gates, dressed in simple dark cloth, face partially veiled, but her posture was not weak. The guards moved to stop her immediately. "State your business," one demanded. Her voice, though soft, carried calm strength. "I have come for the Alpha King and my daughter." The words froze the air. Within minutes, the message reached the throne room. The Alpha King stilled instantly, because deep in his instincts, he already knew who it was. She was escorted inside, step by step through the palace halls. Servants whispered. Warriors watched carefully, until she reached the throne chamber doors. When they opened, time seemed to slow. She stepped in. No chains, no bruises, no fear. The broken slave girl he once saved was gone. In her place stood a woman shaped by survival, stronger, sharper, unbowed. Her eyes met his. So many unspoken years passed in that single gaze. Regret, relief, pain, strength. Before either could speak, small footsteps echoed behind the throne. The little princess ran forward. She stopped midway, eyes wide, breath shaking, because she recognized her instantly. "Mommy?" The woman dropped to her knees, arms opening. The child ran straight into them. Tears flowed freely as mother and daughter held each other tightly. Years of separation closing at once. The entire court watched in silence. Even warriors looked away respectfully. Oh, the Alpha descended slowly from his throne. He stopped before them. For the first time in years, he did not look like a ruler. He looked like a man facing his past. His voice was quieter than any had ever heard it. "You're alive," she nodded. "I survived," she replied softly. There was no accusation in her tone, only truth. He looked at his daughter, then back at her. Guilt flickered across his face. "You should have come to me." Her answer was calm, but heavy. "I was a slave, and you were becoming king. I chose safety for our child, not uncertainty." Her words held no bitterness, only the weight of choices made alone. Silence lingered. Then the little princess grabbed both their hands, pulling them closer together. A simple, innocent act, but powerful. The Alpha looked down at them. His family. The one fate had returned to him. This time, he did not hesitate. He removed the royal pendant from his neck, a symbol only the queen could wear. He stepped forward and placed it gently around her neck. Gasps filled the court. His voice thundered with final authority. "You were once brought here as a slave." He lifted her chin gently. "Now you stand here as the mother of my heir, and rightful Luna of this kingdom." The declaration shook the throne room, but no one dared challenge it. Mother, daughter, Alpha, standing together before the throne, no longer separated by chains, fear, or fate, but united by blood, bond, and destiny. And from that day forward, the kingdom no longer saw just a king. It saw a royal family reborn. A throne once shaken by one word, now made unbreakable by three hearts standing as one.